Ciao guys and welcome back, it's your friend Luca, and in today's video we're gonna talk about the new Lumix S1RII Mark II. Before I start, let me first thank Panasonic for the amazing experience I was able to join during the Lumix Summit in Norway. I loved every aspect and moment I spent during this time. I met all the new friends and I'm extremely grateful for inviting me for such a great event. Now, before you start writing dramas or comedies in the commentary below, let me tell you right away that I didn't get paid to make any video from Panasonic and I don't get to keep this camera, unfortunately. If you are following the channel for long enough, I'm pretty sure you know that I always share neutral reviews without the need of pumping up the hype of new products. But this camera is something I really like. I know that normally you would like to see what are the specs of the camera, and I think they are pretty important also considering the price range. But first of all, I would like to talk about the ergonomics of the camera and the body design, especially for all the Lumix users that have been using the Lumix S1, S1H, S1R, S5 and S5 Mark II, because this is what I consider the perfect body for every type of mirrorless camera. From the first moment I started using the camera, I felt like, finally a fast camera that I can use both for photography and videography gigs without going crazy with the flippy screen, with the dials and different switches that are placed in a sort of a weird way. Panasonic addressed all the complaints we talked about in the Facebook groups and forums, and we finally found the perfect camera body. So what I loved the most when I saw this camera was the tilty flippy screen like the one of the S1H, but I don't know, I feel like this is better. It feels slimmer on the body, so the camera body is not that bulky like the S1H, and it's extremely easy to flip and turn around. So if you want to use this camera as a photography camera and you quickly need to take pictures from the chest or the hips, you simply tilt the screen like this, you tilt it down. If you need to film yourself, you flip the screen and here you are. If you have HDMI cable on the way, you put the screen slightly further away from the camera and then you have a room to touch everything you need without obstructing the screen. So this screen is pure magic. I love it. Thank you Panasonic, you finally did it, and I think I'm gonna replace all my cameras for cameras with this body design, because just for the screen, I'm sold. Now, what is the next important feature in the body design? It's this little switch here. This is a switch that is going from photo mode, video mode and slow and quick mode. So in a matter of very quick click, you can switch between the modes, and each modes can have some presets that you save in the camera, so you don't have to change the settings while you swap from a mode to another one. So if you film in Vlog 24p and you take pictures JPEGs RAW in aperture priority or shutter priority, once you switch between these two modes, you're gonna be instantly on the perfect settings you have been using until now. You can also decide which settings you want to keep while switching from a mode and another, and that's fantastic, especially considering the white balance. And now what I said might sound confusing because I'm a little bit excited about all of this, but to make it simple, let me say that if I'm in photo mode and I keep this dial to aperture priority, the moment I'm in photo mode, the camera is going to aperture priority and is keeping the settings I want to keep as they are. And the moment I switch to video mode, even if I am in aperture priority in this dial, I'm gonna be in full manual control in video mode, and I'm gonna have the picture profile I decided prior to the switch. So as always, I use a Vlog to film videos, so the moment I switch to video mode, I'm gonna get full manual controls, the picture profile I want to use for video mode, and for example the white balance I used in photography before. So this is pretty fantastic. It's super fast. I love to have this feature because working as a hybrid shooter, especially for corporate events, this is life-saving. Now, as you can see here, there are two little buttons off top of the dials, and these are lock-in buttons, and that means that once you click it, this doesn't move anymore, so you cannot accidentally move it and change your settings. I don't find this really necessary for the type of body design, but anyway, you have this possibility. And next to that, we are having back the lock-in switch. You can customize all the bottom and switch and wheels you want to lock once you click lock. This is probably more useful than using these two dials. The first thing I did after playing with the camera on the first days, I mapped this record button to the locking switch, and now this is permanently locked, and so I don't have have the risk of filming some random clips with this bottle. Probably this problem is not going to be a problem anymore the moment we put a cage on the camera, but at the moment there are no cages available, so I don't know. In terms of position of the buttons, dials and everything is 100% like the Lumix S1 and S5 Mark II. So if you are a Lumix user, you will feel like at home holding this camera for the first time. We got another improvement in this camera, that is the viewfinder. We finally got the high resolution 5.76 million pixels OLED viewfinder, the same that we have seen on the Lumix S1RII, S1 and S1R, and this is absolutely beautiful. It's fantastic. I love everything about this viewfinder, and that was the main reason I kept the S1 for very long, because I really love that viewfinder. And this is exactly the same. I have zero issues pulling focus myself if I use vintage lenses or autofocus lenses with the focus clutch. As we can see, we still have the ventilation system above the sensor and on the side of the control wheels. This helps to keep the camera cooled down. In terms of heat management, the camera is doing pretty well. During my test, I ran the camera until the battery died and the camera didn't overheat. I have received the message that the camera was getting hot, but the camera kept going until it shut down because of the battery was empty. I think if you're going to film outdoor during sunny and warm days, you might have different results. I live in the Netherlands and the sun and the warm weather are not really a thing here. Talking about the battery, we have the same we have seen on Lumix S5, S5 and S9, so this is pretty fantastic if you have a bunch of these batteries. I will also add that the power consumption of this camera is on the high side. You will probably need a little bit more batteries while using this camera. As all the Lumix S cameras, you can power the camera via the USB-C port, but in case you're covering long events as a photographer or a hybrid shooter, I would probably consider buying the battery grip to have a better user experience with this camera. Talking about the HDMI delay, I've seen some improvements, but I didn't really run some extensive tests about it. But what I tested was the camera paired with the smartphone thanks to the Lumix Flow application that has been just released. The possibility to monitor the camera with the smartphone, that is super lightweight and very portable, but also with a long-lasting battery, is very valuable. During my test with the smartphone paired with the camera, I couldn't really display the log footage captured from the smartphone with a Rec 709 LUT while filming in Vlog. I think that was a problem of the application that needs an update to solve this problem, but I might be wrong and that can be a user error. Talking about the specification of the camera, let me tell you what are the most important to me, because we don't want to make this video 10 hours long just for a first impression video, right? So this camera is an 8K camera able to record in 10-bit 420 up to 30 FPS. What I consider most important in this camera is the 4K recording options, because with this camera we can record up to 4K 120 with almost a zero crop. That means that if we're filming in 4K up to 30 FPS, we are not going to have any crop. Once we go above 30 FPS, so 48, 50, 60 and 100 and 120, we're gonna have a marginal small crop, so it's not a big deal, and this camera is going to be pretty dope for slow motion. If you're an anamorphic shooter or you like to film in open gate, this camera is able to record in 6.4K 10-bit 420 in 3:2 aspect ratio. And with the future firmware update, the camera will record 8K or 7K open gate, both in compressed codec or in RAW if you're going to film with an external recorders like the Atomos Ninja 5 or the Blackmagic Video Assist 12G. But there is more. This camera can also record in 5.8K Apple ProRes RAW internally, because we have a fantastic CF Express Type B card slot, but we can also record externally to an SSD thanks to the USB-C port. I feel like this is more worth than Alexa Mini. We have to see the dynamic range and the motion cadence of the camera. I will do this test in the future, so stick around if you want to see those tests next to the Alexa Mini. You can also record in 4.7K in Super 35 4/3 aspect ratio in case you like to film with 2x anamorphic scopes. Unfortunately, this recording option is not available if you want to film internally in Apple ProRes RAW, and in that case you will have to wait for the camera to receive the firmware update to output RAW data for the anamorphic aspect ratios. So it would be great if Panasonic can introduce something a little bit taller for all the anamorphic shooters. Please. About the color science, we finally got back the colors we all loved on the first generation of Lumix S cameras, and I didn't notice weird colors in the skin tones. Another important feature in the video aspect is that this camera can be used with the XLR adapter, the new one that was released with the GH7. So this camera is able to record 32-bit float internally, probably with 4 channels, but I have no idea how that preamp sounds, so I cannot talk about it. I'm just sharing what is possible with this camera. If any one of you has tested that XLR adapter with the GH7, please write down in the comment area below what do you think about it, because everyone will find it pretty useful. Talking about the sensor, we have a new 44 megapixel sensor that is being supported by an amazing IBIS. This sensor does not have an optical low-pass filter. The pictures are going to be very detailed, but not in a harsh way, so you're not gonna have like a very digital look, but more of a organic look. And this is thanks to the high density of the sensor that is also going to help against the problem of moire or aliasing artifacts. I know what you are thinking, that the low light capability of the camera might suffer from this high density sensor, and in reality that's not true. From the very first test I'm running, I feel like that the low light capability of this camera are almost the same as the one I've seen on the S5 II, so there are no drawbacks in having an higher resolution sensor like this. Actually, there are a lot of positive aspects of having a sensor like this, because this camera is also able to use the hybrid zoom feature. That's pretty fantastic in case you have a zoom lens, for example this 24-70 f2.8. With the hybrid zoom you can use this lens with a higher zoom range without losing too much resolution on your video, but also on your photos. Let's say if you're taking RAW plus JPEGs and you're delivering JPEGs that are good enough straight out of the camera, with this camera you will be able to have 22 megapixel JPEGs and you will have a range between 24 to 105 without losing any resolution. That's pretty fantastic, and you shouldn't sleep on this feature, because this feature can also be used in video and it's extremely helpful. Now, the mechanical shutter of this camera is going up to 10 fps, but if you switch to the electronic shutter, this camera is going up to 40 frames per second. I know it sounds amazing, but there is a drawback. The buffer is going to be only 80 photos, so you will have 2 seconds of a burst of 40 frames per second. I think this is perfectly fine, especially if you're doing wildlife photography. Pretty sure all the videographers are going to be happy to know that this camera is having false color built into the settings, so you can custom assign a button and turn on and off the false color within a second. That's pretty handy if you need to check your exposure on the go. Like the Lumix S5 IIX, this camera is able to record proxies and upload those files to frame.io, and that's a terrific feature. It can really speed up your workflow in case you're working on events, because the editor is going to be able to work in real time while you're capturing the footage. So we covered the ergonomics of the camera, the video and photo specs. What else is missing? Another good one. That's the IBIS of the camera. This IBIS is truly outstanding. It's much better than what we have seen on the Lumix S5 II, S1 and S1H. This thing is insane. During the Lumix Summit, I tested the Lumix 72-200 f4 with this body while I was on a boat in a very windy day. And I turned on the electronic stabilization with the highest settings, and the footage I was able to capture with the system was totally insane. It was amazing. For example, in this case I'm using the Zeiss 15mm f2.8 with the stabilization turned on and electronic stabilization turned to the highest settings. And as you can see, the footage looks pretty smooth. While this is with the standard crop caused by the electronic stabilization, and I think this is actually pretty smooth as well without the need of that mega crop. And in this case I'm pretty sure you're gonna see a bit of corner warping because I'm using a 15mm ultra-wide angle lens. I sincerely need to read my notes because there are so many features in this camera and there is so much to talk about that this video is not going to be enough. So in case you have some question about details I didn't cover in this video, please let me know in the comment area below, and those comments are gonna have the priority for the upcoming videos I'm gonna make about the camera. But in case you want to test yourself the videos and photos captured by this camera, I will leave a link in the community tab that you can access in case you are subscribed to the channel. But what about the autofocus performances? Well, eventually I ran all my tests during a beta firmware that was installed on the camera, and I was lucky enough that I had to ship the camera back the same day that Panasonic released a firmware update that was solving some minor issues with the autofocus. So I cannot really share any valid information or test about the autofocus performances. You will have to wait for the next video where I will dive into the autofocus performances of this camera. What I can say is that this sensor has 779 face detection autofocus pixels plus a more advanced EI that eventually is going to perform much better than the Lumix S5 IIX. Another great video feature of this camera is related to the dynamic range and sensitivity of the sensor. The base ISO for Vlog is 200, and that means that we can potentially leave home the ND filters in case we are okay with filming stop-down around f2.8 or f4, but we can also increase the dynamic range captured by the camera, enabling the dynamic range boost. That's gonna change the base ISO from 200 to 400. The sensor readout is gonna be a bit slower, so we will capture a bit more of rolling shutter artifacts, and we will not have all the recording options available in the menu. Next to all the features I talked, the price range we are talking about is totally outstanding because this camera is going just for 3,600 euros. I'm very happy that Panasonic was able to squeeze so much tech and features in such a small camera at this price point. It's truly fantastic, and I think this camera is gonna sell by itself without the need of us YouTubers, influencers, whatever you want to call us. But this is a very good product. I'm pretty sure Panasonic is gonna have pretty bright days thanks to the engineers that they developed this camera. This is it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!